Hi everyone. Today we'll be learning about another chapter of Cbse class 10, which is related to Anne Frank. And I know that most of you must have heard about her in novels, stories, books, and many of the chapters have been written regarding it. So today also we are going to understand one perspective of that chapter. But before I start the chapter, we'll discuss few things about World War II because if you know that NA was kind of a survivor who had survived during that, survived to an extent, though in the last she succumbed to death. But she was very much there during 2 to 3 years when the World War II took place, and she used to hide in his father's office. And there were some instances which she used to write in a diary, so that is why we always call it as the Diary of Anne Frank. So the instances, a few of the instances that she wrote were about the sufferings, about the Holocaust, about the genocides which were taking place at that moment. So we need to just understand a little bit about World War II so that we can understand what Anne must have observed and seen and what mental state she could have been at that point of time. So if you can see on this on my screen, I have circled few cities and countries. So basically, this is a map of European countries because the World War II basically arose from this. So World War II was also known as Global War, which started from 1st September 1939 to 2nd September 1945, almost a span of 6 years and probably one day. Now, why was it called a global war? Because most of the countries, most of the higher and most of the economically sound countries, they got into this war. Maximum of the countries were involved, and whenever it is a war, there is some kind of some kind of military thing that comes to the picture. There had to be two parties who were going to conduct a war. So here also, the countries were divided into two parts, namely allies and axis. So in allies, there were certain countries like France, UK, USA, Poland, China, and Greece. On the other hand, in the axis, it was Nazi Germany, Japan, and Italy. So they were kind of alliances, you can say, that they were fighting against each other because there is no purpose of war if they're united. So there were the countries that are fighting against each other, and Adolf Hitler also had a very important phase here because he was the one who was trying to capture countries like Poland, France, China, and Greece. And to some extent, some kind of dictatorship was being imposed during his rule. I've also mentioned the Holocaust. So that was a very serious problem that time. All the European Jewish people, they were being brutally killed and murdered. And those who were left, they were also victims of discrimination and etc. So these were certain things which led to the start of World War II. And Anne Frank was also one of the person who had encountered each and every situation. Now let us understand from the perspective of Anne Frank's diary of what she meant to write. So we'll start chapter explanation here. Now, there are certain words, like I always do at the starting of the chapter, to make you understand. So, the first word is musings here, which means reflection. Suppose I read something and I write my musings. That means I write my reflections of the reading, like what I feel, whatever my thoughts are there, they will be called reflections. Need to get kind of things off my chest. Because sometimes you say, I need to get it out of my heart, I need to get it out of my chest. So it simply means take out something or reveal everything that is hidden in your heart, probably expressing yourself. Paper has more patience than people. Of course, if you try speaking to a person, there will be higher chances that the person might try to interrupt you. They might become judgmental. They might not have even patience to listen to you for long. But when it is about paper, when you write this journaling thing, paper has got more patience because you keep writing and keep sharing your stuff with the paper, and the paper may not even stop you. So, as per Annie Frank, she feels that paper has got more patience than people. Paper can listen without judging. Brooding here means worry. Plunge means basically it means to jump. But when we are talking about this chapter, plunge here is used when we come directly to conclusion without even understanding or without even stating or clearing anything. Plunge here means directly coming to the conclusion without explanation or other things. Solemn means serious. Pleading glances. Pleading glances means, when somebody, through their expressions, they try to show you that they want something. Suppose if I want to show you something, so I'll try to show you a pleading glance, like a requesting or something very I'm eager to look for. Okay. Now let's start with this Anne Frank and her thoughts, very quick discussion. Anne Frank felt that writing a diary is a strange experience for her as it was her first time to write something like journals. Now, I told you that the World War had started from 39 to and it ended 245. So Anne Frank during 42 year when during the year of 42, 1942, she has started writing diary, and this is kind of an imagination that she used to have, and she used to portray that imagination in the form of stories. But while she was writing a diary, she felt that it is very awkward for me because I've never done this before. Anne Frank had never written a diary earlier, and this is her first attempt towards writing a diary or a journal. So she feels it's kind of a strange feeling. Sometimes when we start a new thing, we also feel strange that this is something we have not tried before. Similarly, Anne Frank was little skeptical of how to write and what she'll write, but she wanted to write. And there was a reason why she wanted to write that we will understand when we read the chapter. She also felt that no one might be interested to read musings. Musing, I told you, it's the reflections of a 13-year-old girl. She also felt at the same time that even if she writes a diary or a journal, then who's going to read it? Because she was just 13 years old and she had this dilemma. Even if I write a diary, I doubt that if anybody would ever read my diary. So, what is the point of writing it? So, she was a little confused as to start writing a diary. She used to feel lonely most of the times. She felt that paper had more patience and she would share her thoughts only with it unless she finds a true friend. So, because of the circumstances, because of the war, because of the conditions around, everything was so isolated. She used to feel lonely. And then there was less communication between each other. She was lacking a good friend. She did not have a friend then. The only friend that she could trust was a diary. If she had a friend, she would have discussed all the things with her friend. But right now, she misses her friend. So, who has she thought? Who has she made her friend? It is her own diary. She had loving parents, 16-year-old girl, and few people around her. So these are like the kind of people who were with there when she was hiding inside a room. And there was one girl who was a sister. She was 16 years old. She had parents and few people, I think, who also must have been hidden with her in order to save herself. So these were the people she was around with. She knew that she had people in her life, but still she could not confide in them. Confide here means, children, when we feel that we want to share a secret with somebody because we confide in them, we trust them, we rely on them. So even after having parents, sisters, approximately 30 people around her, she has a good gathering around her. But there was nobody to confide upon. She could not trust, she could not share her things with anybody, and she only wanted a trusted true friend. So the only requirement for Anne Frank was that she wanted a friend, or else she's going to make her own diary. She makes an imaginary friend named Kitty and starts communicating with her through her diary. So now what she does, the diary in which she was writing, she made her best friend as a diary, and then she starts communicating. Kitty writes that the class she's a part of is quaking in bones as the result declaration is about to take place. Half of the kids are creating bets of who shall pass or fail. So now she has started writing a diary in a form of an imagination, and she writes that there is a class and everybody is very, there are children sitting in the class and they are a little nervous. The reason of the nervousness is because the result declaration is about to take place. And naturally, when a result declaration takes place, then half of the students get to know that they're going to be promoted, they're going to be detained, or they have to repeat the class, etc. So everybody was a little skeptical of what the result is going to be, and so they started putting bets. Like, okay, if she passes, I'm going to be the winner. They were putting bets on each other, like who's going to pass and who's going to fail. She gives random names in her imagination. So she has made some friends, imaginary friends, and not even friends, but classmates, I could say, like GN, CN, Jack. So when you read these names in the chapter, these are basically imaginary names given by Anne Frank. She mentions that there are enough dummies so as to refrain them from getting to the next form. Form here is basically used for the class. Here, first form, sixth form, this means first class and sixth class. So now what she says that there are dummies. Dummies means stupid, or children who are not qualified enough, who are not literate enough. So she says that half of my class is like a dummy. So if you ask me, I don't think they should be promoted. They should be sent back to the same class. They must be repeating it. So in a way, she's calling her friends dummy also, and she's considering herself an intelligent girl as well. She's skeptical about her maths marks. She's not very sure about her maths also. And because the maths teacher that she has is really annoyed with her. So she's really doubtful that what about maths subject? What is my teacher going to do with me? She writes that she is cordial with teachers. All the teachers that are teaching her, she is very good in relationship with them. She's very cordial, except one teacher, which we'll read ahead. So there are total 9 teachers. There are 7 male and 2 female teachers. Now, who's that teacher that she's not at all good in terms with? It is Mr. Keesing. As she imagined, is a fogey teacher. Now, fogey teacher here means somebody who's really old-fashioned, follows old practices of teaching, and is not a good, person when it comes to being a teacher and is constantly annoyed by her as she talks a lot. So here, Mr. Keeson really gets upset. Whenever he comes to the class, he sees that Anne Frank is discussing, chatting, or talking with each other. So this really annoys him and he really gets irritated or frustrated often. He gave her punishments. Now, he gave her warnings initially that if you talk, I'm going to do this. If you again talk, I'm going to do this. But when Anne Frank refused to listen, he had to give her some punishment. He asked her to write an essay on chatterbox. These are very traditional. Now you can just see the kind of punishment is also very traditional. He asked Anne to write a complete essay on chatterbox. He said that you speak so much, so I think you should write an essay on being a chatterbox. Initially, she simply wrote it down and kept that in her bag. So what she did, she wrote this. She made a chit of it, and she wrote that it is her homework. She has to write an essay on chatterbox, and she put it into her bag, and she went to her home. So in the evening, she was completing her work, and some point she had already forgotten about it that she had got some homework. But when she opened her bag, she saw that chit, and it reminded her that she has to write an essay. She knew that it is an easy task to ramble on words, but she wanted to write something convincing. Now she says that ramble on here means to write anything. Now there are children, when we ask them to write answers, they write anything. But there are very few students who will write something very solid, very nice. So when you have to write something solid, you have to take time. And when you have to simply ramble on words, then you can write anything that comes to your hand. So she knew that I am not going to submit my assignment like this. Whatever I'm going to write here, that is going to be submitted. I'm going to write something very convincing so that my teacher doesn't stop me from talking. So she's wanted to write something in favor of Chatterbox. Okay, the intention of the teacher was that he will make her write an essay. She will get frustrated and she will understand that next time she talks, again, she will be asked to write an essay. But here, Annie takes it very positively and she makes sure that she writes it in a very convincing manner so that even the teacher understands. She finally wrote a 3-page essay on it. Imagine a girl who was trying to be so convincing, she made it. She wrote a 3-page essay on it. She insisted that talking is a trait. Now, what was the most important thing, or you can say the summary of her essay, that talking is a trait and that she would try her best to control but not stop. Trait means a character or behavior, something which is into you from your birth. So she says talking is a trait, it is characteristics of children. So what the maximum she can do is she can control her talking, but she cannot stop it. She had inherited this trait from her mother, and she says it's like inherited, like we have genetic things. She says that it is in my genes. I'm supposed to speak a lot, so I don't think I'll be able to stop speaking, but yes, I'll try my best to speak less. Mr. Keening laughed, and on the next session, now when he read this example, this essay, he really laughed. But in the next class, again, he gave her an essay, and this time it was an incorrigible chatterbox. Incorrigible means when it becomes a bad habit to talk. So he says that there are two kind of people. One is a chatterbox, and the other is a incorrigible chatterbox. That means it's now become a bad habit to talk. But this time, Anna was really frustrated. She said, every time I have to write on the same topic. So she went to her friend and she said that, is there something else we can do on this topic? Can we write something else? So the friend insisted that, why don't you write a verse, a poem on it? And, we can make it a little interesting also. So the friend, along with Annie, wrote a small poem. And when it was presented to Mr. Keening, he wrote that poem in front of the class. He also made sure that he add few of the comments, and the poem was, she wrote about a mother duck and a father swan, and how he killed three of his ducklings for quacking too much. So now you can see that she's kind of relating this example to her personal life, that there were a father and a mother, and the father killed the duckling because they were speaking too much, they were quacking too much. So in a way, it is comparing her situation to the ducklings. So here, if we compare, instead of the father, here would be Mr. Keening, and in place of duckling, it would be NA. So she was trying to hint him that this is how, what kind of behavior you are showing towards me. This is how I feel. So when Mr. Keening read that poem, he really felt a little disturbed, and he said that maybe I'm being too harsh on this little girl. So he read that poem in front of the entire class and did not say anything to any after that. So I hope, children, this small, short, crisp story of Anne Frank is clear to you. If there are any doubts or comments you would definitely like to ask me, please put down a comment in the comment section. Thank you.